Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard.
This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Just like many of the athletes and business leaders we feature on Scoreboard.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here in today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast. I'm joined by Karen Brown. Karen, thank you so much for being part of this series.
Thanks, Chris, for inviting me.
Karen, we're sitting here on Tuesday, the 12th of August, on a beautiful winter's day here in Brisbane. How's your morning been?
That's pretty good. I coach a open netball team at school, so up early Tuesday morning with netball coaching and then swap uniforms and I'm here at work for the day.
Right, okay, busy. And we've got the Echo holiday tomorrow, so it must be a bit of a chaotic week.
Well, it is because my pharmacy is actually on the border of Moreton Bay in Brisbane. So our public holiday was yesterday and then 50 metres up the road, it's tomorrow. So it's a very confusing week.
It's like living on the coast of the Gold Coast in New South Wales with the time zones, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So we just roll with it. It's all good.
Excellent. Karen, I'm curious to know about your background, and netball has been your thing all your life. Can you talk us through your netball journey?
Yes, netball has been, I'm on a podcast, so you can't see how tall I am, but I am 6'3". So height, I was blessed with height, actually the shortest child in my family. So netball and sport has been a huge part of my upbringing. And then, yes, very lucky to, through school, play representative netball and then was offered a professional contract for the Firebirds. So debuted when I was 19, which was actually quite young in those days. And, you know, privileged to be paid to play your hobby. And isn't it wonderful now, 2 decades later, that women can have a full-time career in netball, footy, cricket, soccer, you name it. So, but back in my day, it was you trained in the morning, you went to uni or work during the day, and then you train again at night, travel on the weekend. So it was definitely a hobby, and we were just excited that we got paid some money to do it.
That's brilliant. And in terms of your memories of netball, when did it begin, and when did you think you're any good at it, and then maybe there's the next level?
So I started when I was 8. I just loved being parts of teams. I was a goal shooter. Actually, I played both ends right up until I was 16 or 17. So, yes, blessed with height. So it was always something. I wasn't the most agile. So my dad actually played front row for Australia for rugby league. So I was blessed with his speed, which wasn't much. So, yes, netball was it. And I loved shooting. I loved the team environment. And then, yeah, just as you work your way through and you realise that, hang on a minute, I've got something special here, and you get an opportunity and you're able to display that opportunity when it means the most, and then you get offered contracts and it's really exciting. And, you know, there's a time when I got invited to the AIS, and we can talk about this later, but I declined it because of what I wanted to do with university. I knew that pharmacy was always going to be my career and not netball. So there's a few sliding door moments in there, but yeah, team sports, loved it, and still to this day, as I said, I'm coaching, heavily involved in the sport, giving back. But yeah, team sports in general, love them.
Yeah, and in regards to that Firebirds team, do you still keep in touch with some of them?
Yeah, they're some of my closest friends, and I think that's what happens in sport, particularly in those teenage years. They're the ones who align with your values. So your school friends might be going out partying and stuff, and you know that you've got to be at netball the next morning. So, yeah, I think 30 years later, they're still some of my closest girlfriends, bridesmaids, godmothers of my children. And now it's wonderful. You go to the netball together. Your daughters are playing netball. So, yeah, very special. And I think that's the best thing that comes out of sports is the friendships you make and lifelong friendships that you make.
Absolutely, 100%. And I was reflecting on my life actually recently about all the teams and all the things you meet with people. And when you're a teammate with something, win, lose or draw, even if you travel with them as a team, It's sort of this deep connection. There's a common interest and a common shared story.
Well, they feel like your sisters. Like they're like your sisters. They're like your brothers. You go through the highs and lows. They see you at your highest and your lowest. So, yeah, there's very much a family feel to it. And I must admit, when I retired from netball, that was the thing I missed most, was actually just seeing them every day. They're such a big part of your life. So it wasn't so much the game itself. It was actually just spending time with them.
Absolutely, and the stories get a little bit enhanced as well. So you your 13 goals become 18 goals, and then 25 goals. Remember that day you got 30 goals?
Yeah, so true.
You touched on pharmacy there for a second. Your journey into it, and where did that interest come from?
Yeah, so grade 9 at a careers information day, I decided I wanted to be a pharmacist. So I knew I wanted to be in health. I wanted to help people. And as a 14-year-old girl, I thought like pharmacies looked like a much prettier place to work than in the four walls of a GP practice or a hospital environment. No health background in my family. So it wasn't like I was following in anyone's footsteps. And yeah, I've now been in ownership 20 years. I absolutely love it. It's exactly what I thought it would be. I don't think there's too many careers where you walk in the morning not knowing what's in front of you for the day, but you walk out at the end of each day knowing that you've absolutely made a difference to people's lives. So yes,
That's amazing.
that
What's the
teenage dream, and I'm living that still.
You're living it through. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And you're having fun. What's the key to running a good pharmacy?
Just being part of the community. And I think it's quite old-fashioned pharmacy, and that's kind of what I grew up knowing, where you are just the most trusted figure in your community. It's obviously everything that you do within the four walls, but I love the outside stuff as well. And we sponsor the local netball team, and I'm down there hosting a clinic or speaking to those girls about leadership and mentoring. You're at the retirement villages, so you are just so highly respected and trusted. Which is a really nice feeling to be. And as I said, you just get to make a difference. And the scope of pharmacy is greatly expanding. It's unbelievable how much it's changed in the 20 years. And then it's an amazing business to own as well. I've always loved accounting and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So, and then with my other business, Batch Tested, it's kind of the two worlds of sport and pharmacy coming together, which as a uni student, loving sport, it was kind of dietetics, physio, medicine. Like never did I ever think sport and pharmacy would go together. So, I wear a lot of hats, but there's a synergy to all the hats that I wear. And I think at the core of it, I just want to help people, and something I love doing.
That's a great value to have. You mentioned batch tested. I'm going to talk about the idea of what it is for listeners out there that know nothing about batch tested. You're sort of deeply ingrained into Australian sport. Where did the idea come from, and what is it about?
Yeah, so Batch Tested is an online platform where we only range certified and tested supplements for athletes. So 1 in 3 supplements, and when I say supplements, vitamins, protein powders, electrolytes, 1 in 3 non-tested products that you find at the pharmacy, the supermarket, the health food store, online, actually contain a prohibited substance, which would result in a career-ending positive drug test for an athlete. So friends of mine that are sports dietitians came to me just before Tokyo and said, we're really struggling to find these batches that have been third-party tested for athletes. You deal with them all the time in pharmacy. You deal with these companies all the time in pharmacy. You clinically understand these products, and then you've been drug tested and you understand drugs in sport. You're the perfect person. Can you just bring it all together for us? And so it's kind of just helping their teams and their athletes, and then it's obviously just grown. So we supply the whole Olympic team. We do pretty much every AFL, NRL, all thousands of Australian athletes. It's a mind-boggling subject for athletes, and so much of what we do is education just around third-party testing, the risks. When I was playing netball, it was just a blanket, you do not take supplements. 20 years later, they realized that athletes do want to take supplements. So how do we make it as safe as possible? And zero supplements is still the only zero risk. But if they want to take them, and a lot of them, it's immune support, gut support, recovery support. If they do want to take those vitamins and supplements, how do we make it as safe as possible? And it then goes into the clinical role of being a sport pharmacist, which is huge overseas. It's not a stream of a sport pharmacy that is recognised here in Australia. So that's kind of my long-term goal is, showing the role that a pharmacist can have in sporting teams, and whether it's drugs in sport, whether it's supplements, that whole space of clean sport. So as I said, my two worlds collided, and I'm going to say it's a passion project, but I absolutely love being back amongst the teams, back amongst athletes, being part of the medical team, helping the doctors and the dietitians, the high performance guys. How do we make it as safe as possible for them, and how do we get the those 1%ers that they're all looking for?
You talked about sports pharmacist being a thing in the US, but not so much here. Can you describe what that role is? Is it a physical outlet? Is it an online store?
No, so it is. It's just part of their medical team. So the general rule of pharmacy is wherever medicines are involved, there should be a pharmacist involved. So a lot of the role is how drugs work in the body. So will I give them a tablet that could take 2 hours to work, or I could give them a wafer that will work in 20 minutes at half time? A lot of it's to do with drugs in sport. So can I actually take this? Is it prohibited? Is it safe? There's some drugs that you can have during competition, but they're banned during competition, but you can have them out of competition. So how long does that take to get out of your body? If you take it on Monday and you play on Friday, will it be out of your body before you play? So that's the big part of sport pharmacy. And what I find as well in my role in Australia is the team doctors are very much focused on the athlete, but then that athlete will have a lot of other doctors, whether it's their skin doctor, their mental health doctor, their GP. So actually just linking them all together. And also with a lot of the athletes, it's how do I get them back out on the field on Saturday so they can play? And then how do we deal with the aftermath then? Like you see it quite a bit when they retire or they get delisted. Their whole life has just been in that weekly mode of how do I get them ready again? And even when you look at Olympic Games and things like that, once every 4 years, they get that one chance to swim the 100-meter final. We don't want them being sick beforehand. We want to make sure their medicines are sorted. We definitely don't want a positive drug test, etc. So we've got a home Olympics coming. So that's my goal is, by 2032 that I'm heavily involved in that Olympic program. And the pharmacy program at Olympic Games is huge. We're talking 300 pharmacists, multiple pharmacy locations. It's a massive role that they play in the polyclinics. And so, that's my goal for 2032.
I'd imagine there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to different sports and different, I suppose, providers and then different, as you meant, duration in terms of timing and testing, etc.
Very cyclic.
Put it all together, and I suppose from an athlete's point of view or a league's point of view or a team's point of view that they're got confidence in you to know that you're adhering to the latest regulation.
Yeah. It's and different drugs are banned in different sports because of what they can do. You think of some of the ones that help you stop shaking. You can't have them if you're in golf or if you're in archery, but you could have them in another sport where fine motor, so it's so different. And yes, every year that WADA ban list changes. So it's and whilst the athlete has the sole responsibility of what goes in their mouth, there is a huge trust with that whole team around them, and that's what we see definitely in that supplement space. The last 2 years, there's been 0 positive drug tests, and that's our mission at Batch Tested. But prior to that, it could have been up to 15, 20 a year that were testing positive to contaminated supplements. So it's, as I said, it's a minefield. The athletes get educated, but where we notice it is the parents, the loved ones that think they're just helping getting another bottle of vitamin C and not realizing that the batch that was there was tested, but the batch they get at the pharmacy is not tested. So a lot of it is education and the assumptions that we hear, but also the impact of marketing jargon, social media, influencers. It is a minefield out there for athletes. And if you're 50% educated, it can go horribly wrong. So, and also athletes will also very openly say they are guilty straight away, and then they've got to prove their innocence. The general public are innocent until they're proven guilty, but that gets leaked to the media, even if the first sample came back fault. It's a nightmare for them to then clear their name, even if they've done nothing wrong. So, and even there's positive drug tests due to food contamination. There's positive drug tests due to bodily fluids, kissing, things like that. So, I see athletes where it's absolute paranoia, will not use a blender that may have not been cleaned properly from the person before, and there's contaminated protein powder in there. I know of homes where there's a wife blender and an athlete blender, right through to, not buying food that's on the street or this kind of stuff. So, and then I've got the blasé ones that are like, what's the big deal? It's just a vitamin. So I've seen the extremes, and that's, the role we play. And as I said, I love being part of that whole community again. And just being a tiny little part of their support team.
Absolutely. And I assume also from an athlete's point of view, the education stance is along the lines of you just one mistake away from your contract being ripped up and your career gone.
And that's what we say, just don't risk it. Like, why would you risk it? Supplements are literally supplementing your nutrition, your training, everything that you do. Why would you risk it by picking up a fish oil capsule off the shelf? Like, it's just so not worth it in the big picture of all of it. So if you want to take supplements, first of all, understand why you want to take them and make sure there's a purpose to it, not just for the sake of it. And then how do we make it as absolutely safe as possible? Because, we've seen so many athletes go through the trauma of, inadvertently testing positive, and it ruins their careers. And you'd never want to go through all of that just because of a fish oil or a probiotic or a vitamin C. So,
Karen, you touched on the word goal before and the goal setting by 2032. Have you always been a goal setter?
Yes, and I think there's pros and cons. So yes, being an athlete, always looking forward and what's the next thing. I'm highly competitive. So in my strengths testing, it's always competition number one, focus, drive. So that's innate. I feel like once you're an athlete, you're always an athlete in that mindset. What I have found, though, is that over my pharmacy career, I felt goal setting kind of created a bit of a tunnel vision. And so I was only 6 months out of registering as a pharmacist and got offered my first partnership. So I was quite young. And so technically in my career as a pharmacist, all I've ever known is owning pharmacies. And so for 10 years, I had this one store, very focused on it, turned it into a very highly successful pharmacy. And that's when I was like, hang on a minute, I'm actually missing these little opportunities off from the periphery. And I felt like I dropped my blinkers then and kind of was open to oh my God, there's all this opportunity that I was missing because I was so tunnel vision on reaching those goals. And so definitely I've noticed the last kind of 8 to 10 years, just buying other pharmacies, batch tested, I run a pharmacy owners conference, like all these other little things. And so it's a really big motto of mine that if you see a door just slightly ajar, just push it open, walk in, see what it's about. Like, you never know where it's going to lead. So you can't say yes to everything. But I felt that goal setting trait kind of tunneled me there for a little while. And now I'm really conscious to make sure that you've kind of got that periphery open and can just see the stuff that's on that peripheral. And knowing where that could lead. So I definitely feel, the goal setting trait's good, but it can work against you sometimes.
Almost like you're a bit of a yes person to a lot of things, and I am too, to a degree of like, what's that? Yeah. Oh, I'm curious. The problem is you run out of time, I suppose, by saying yes to everything. How do you say no to things?
So I heard Lane Beachley speak at a conference one time and about this whole scenario of how do you say yes and no. And she was like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a F no. And so having those moments of actually it excites me so much that it's a yes. And I got an opportunity recently where I got a phone call and they said, can you do this? And I was like, hell yes. And they're like, do you want to hang on, sort out it? I said, no, I will sort out everything else in my life to make sure I can make this happen because it's such a hell yes moment. Whereas if it's not a hell yes moment, that's when, not necessarily excuses, but you go, actually, no, I'm not prepared to change that. No, I can't change that. I can't do that. So sorry, it's a no. I also like the line of, I'm really sorry, I don't have the capacity to do that. So it's not that I don't want to do it. I just don't have the capacity. And also I'm one of those people that want to do it 110%. So if I can't give it my all, then it's not the right option for me. So, but I think you're right in that you at least are curious enough to see where that opportunity or that connection, and there's been some where you go, wow, I never knew that person would lead to that, and that. So I don't think, sometimes you don't know right up front, whether it's a LinkedIn connection or you introduce yourself to someone at a function or something, you have no idea where that opportunity could go. But yeah, that hell yeah moment, normally if it's a hell yes, you will work out your life to make sure you can make it happen. And if you're not that committed, then you know it's not the right option for you.
No, I thank you very much for saying hell yes to this podcast. It's the first time I've had that response. It's amazing. So I really do appreciate that. Just on the goal setting, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on it. When you were running your own pharmacy, was it Was there a tangible thing that you were tunnel visioned on? Was it like to make a net profit of tax, or was there a figure, or was it just to get your house in order, or what was the goal when you're running a single store?
I just always want to be the best. I think I'm just constantly driven to how can I do things better. So I love the first pharmacy I got was quite an old pharmacy, and it was in a community where the owner had it for 30 years, kind of a semi-rural community. The owner had it 30 years, so it was very frowned upon that she retired and that I came in. I wasn't part of the community. I didn't live there. And I actually used netball. I was like, how am I going to win this community over to see that I'm not this big bad guy from the city? And I used netball. So I went to the netball club, got involved with the netball. And then they loved me and thought, how amazing is this that we've got a former Firebird running our pharmacy, and then leveraged that into the community then to then win them over kind of thing. So I love that challenge part of it, but it's just that innate drive that how do we do that better? Even against ourselves and not necessarily against our competition. I think that's what sport, it's being really respectful of your competition, but you're never obsessed by them. Like even in sport, you kind of go, this is who we're playing this weekend, and we'll do a little bit of work on them. But largely we work on what's in our control. And that's something, particularly in the pharmacy world, there's a lot that's not in our control. We're very dependent on government, who's in government, who's our health minister. There's so much in that whole stakeholder area that we are not in control of. And people can get really caught up in that and consume all their energy. Whereas I'm very much on what is in our control and where can we win in that space, and everything else that happens is a bonus. So there's some of the lessons through sport that have constantly been with me, but I love innovating. I love being the first to try something. One of my favorite mottos is build the plane while you're flying it. Don't wait to dot I's, cross T's, pack your parachute. What's the worst thing that can happen? Just have a crack, try something new. If you want to adapt it and go, that quite didn't land how we thought it would, but maybe if we try this, this, and this, or that's actually not going to work. It clearly wasn't a thing for the community. So let's scrap that and let's try something else. But have a crack. And that's kind of always been, so it's just in that innate drive to just constantly want to keep doing things. And also never been, I'm never limited to assumptions. And when I bought this store, my main store that I'm in now, it was quite an old store in an old area, low socioeconomic, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. How do you attract high socioeconomic? How do you attract a different clientele? How do you build that community? So not kind of being limited by people's assumptions, or I'm happy to break the mold and, push the boundaries.
When you talk about competitiveness, you also mentioned sort of not worrying about your competitors, but also keeping an eye on them to a degree. And then you talked about being the best. Is the best or the best that you can do?
The best that we can do. And I think there's something as well in competition that from a leadership perspective, it can be quite daunting to people. Am I perceived as the owner and their boss? Am I perceived that it's a perfectionism? And to me, it's not perfectionism. To me, we've got high standards, but collectively as a group, how do we get everyone on board? And in my pharmacy, I talk about, so I own the Terry White Chemmart at Arana Hills here in Brisbane, and we talk about the Arana bus. And so that's bringing on my sporting journey. We're on the bus. What does it take to get a ticket on the bus? Where is the bus headed? So I'm very big at showing them the vision and the journey, but we're all on this bus together. So what's our energy? What's our fuel supply? What happens if we turn left and we should have turned right? We host a Shark Tank, for example. So I'm very big on people want to belong to something bigger than themselves. And it's our job as leaders to create that place where they feel like they belong and they've got ownership and they're so much part of this journey. And it's not my business partners and I have success. The whole team has success. And I often talk about leadership in a sporting analogy way, is that I felt when I first started in those early days, I was very much the captain coach. So I was on the field, on the court, pulling off all the big plays, doing everything for everyone. And then it kind of then moved on to being able to be coaching from the sideline or in the grandstand and being able to have that big bird's eye view of everything. Now I see it, there's so many roles that I play depending on who the person is. So I think with leadership, it's very situational of who needs you at what times. But I love being the water boy and going out and just giving them the pep talk. I love filling in, like, I'll just fill that gap. If you need me there, I'll go do that there. But I love being the cheerleader and actually creating stars out of my people. It's not up to me just to be the star of this store. It's how do I get all my team to be stars and lift them up. And I think some of the best leaders in the world are the ones that inspire you to be 10 foot taller and to bring out the best in you. And I think some of the best coaches in the world are actually just the best people managers. It's how do we bring a group of individuals together for a common goal, and whether that's having a really successful pharmacy or winning a premiership.
Absolutely.
They're just humans.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a couple of, I mean, I've heard the transitional leader versus the transactional leader, as well as someone that's got a bigger vision versus just trying to get the transactions done and trying to think. But I'm also curious to know about feedback and the noises and the voices early on in your career about pharmacy. Like maybe someone said to you, oh, pharmacy, well, there's no money in that, wouldn't be doing that. Or like batch test, you're like, that's a silly idea. Versus, and also feedback from your staff as well. How do you manage feedback?
Well, I love proving people wrong. So I don't mind that kind of feedback. I think at the start and definitely through my whole career, I genuinely see myself as coaching the team. Like I've never seen myself as the boss or the employer. I've always been, and I think as well in sport, we're so good at giving two-way feedback. What I find sometimes in the work environment is getting across to not take things personally. Like in sport, we just say it how it is to each other. We're all in the, so it's really understanding that person and knowing what makes them tick, knowing what motivates them, how they're different. And it's like you want that diversity. You don't want, I attract driven people, but you can't have a whole team of high expectation driven. You need to have it kind of blended and softened. And but then you've got some really, I'm going to say quiet people, but how you bring out their best in them, and it doesn't have to be starry. It's just in their way. How do you bring out the best in them? So, it doesn't mean I always nail those difficult conversations. I think they're always hard for a reason. But it's forming those relationships so that hopefully they aren't a difficult conversation. And I heard Billy Slater say in a podcast, which I loved, about banking credit when it comes to feedback. So you've almost, as a coach, or that it's depositing enough into that account that then when you want to have a difficult conversation or give them the hard feedback, you can take credit out, kind of thing, because they know where it's coming from, a place of care and intent and things like that. Whereas if you've never deposited anything into that account and you just take from them, they're like, hang on a minute. So I've always liked that analogy that, and it's not necessarily the positive, negative feedback sandwich. It's that notion of you've created such a relationship that they know if you give them honest, constructive feedback, that it's coming from a place of genuine care for them as a person and not taken in the wrong context.
I love that. I haven't heard that before.
It's an amazing, his interview on the Imperfects. It's one of the best podcasts I've heard, Billy. Yeah, really, really. He had some eye-opening.
Listen, I love a good podcast, and you always pick up some information on that.
Yeah.
On that, we've talked about in previous guests. We've talked about resilience. We've talked about empathy. Where do those two fit in?
It's interesting with empathy. So when we talk about strengths training, empathy is like my bottom. And some people, I don't know, I feel sometimes, I know I'm empathetic because I'm in a caring industry of health and helping people, etc. But I think I just blend my other traits together. I am a toughen up princess mindset. My kids would absolutely say that. So yes, I kind of, I am just toughen up, get on with it kind of thing. But there is a softer side to me, and I think that's definitely something that I work on, is that vulnerability piece. Resilience. I think there's so many times, definitely in sport, where you got knocked back down and you get yourself back up again. And And also I think as well, when I think of winning and being the best, to me, winning isn't always the materialistic thing that comes at the end. There's so many ways you can win, and resilience is that. You can get knocked down and you get back up again, or you take a hit to something that didn't work and you're like, okay, how are we going to change it and come? So it's not about the trophies or the medals or, the records, etc. There's so much to winning that's, not about that. But yes, empathy. My team would say I'm empathetic, but it's one of those things I do have to work on in that, not everyone.
It's a tough one, empathy. And just on that point around winning, we recently interviewed Nat Cook, and she was talking about that she's always winning. And it was a kind of a really interesting philosophy that sometimes she didn't look at the scoreboard at all.
Correct.
It wasn't anything to do with the scoreboard. I was like, wow, that's hard to do. But she's like, you've got to train yourself.
It's not black and white.
Win, lose or draw. And she goes, it's all right. You can't beat me. I'm always winning. So that's a really good attitude to take. I'm also curious around the balance between business, sport, and then being a parent, and how that molds in terms of some of the traits that we talk about leadership. Obviously, we can read all these parenting books about do this, do that. But if you're not in the right headspace as a parent, then that comes out to your kids, right?
Yeah, I think so I've got a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And a lot of people say to me, how do you do what you do and all the hats that I wear? First and foremost, have the most supportive husband and parent. I think you absolutely need this village around you. But also I think of both my children, but in particular my 14-year-old daughter, to think what an example that I'm setting for her, and that you can follow your dreams and you can be this strong, independent woman. But also I like the notion of leaning in. So not balance, not trying to lean into what needs you the most. So whether it's being wife, whether it's being mum, whether it's being at the pharmacy, whether it's batch tested, whether it's coaching, whatever, friendships, whatever it is, what needs most at the time, and kind of a lean in mentality, lean back out, etc. So, and I also think when it comes to balance, and I think of it as like a flat seesaw, nothing fun ever happens at equilibrium. Like that's that taking a chance thing. It might go up, it might go down. But I think of just the comments from my kids, and I also think quality over quantity. And even with netball coaching, so I'm coaching at my old school, and that's where my daughter goes to school. And I must admit at the time I was like, I probably don't have time for this, but I want to give back. And my daughter thinks I'm the coolest mum in the world because I coach the first at school. And, from when she's been in grade 4 right through to now, her knowing the seniors because of mum's the netball coach kind of thing, and her being on the sidelines. So I might not be at the P&F meeting, or I might not be doing tuck shop, or I might not always be at school pickup. But what it means to her for me to coach the netball team is something I never thought, the impact that would have on her has been amazing. So I wouldn't say I think you can have it all, but I think it's finding that leaning into who needs you most and being open and being aware of who needs you most at the time, but also then taking time for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, great advice. And interesting. Doing these podcasts, my middle son spread at school something that I interviewed, like Luka Doncic, which I didn't. But it's kind of like he's like, "Oh, Dad's a podcaster," and I was like, "Oh, great." That's it's a little bit of happiness in that.
Proud,
Yeah. Before we get on to you and some questions about coaching, when you see these athletes now that are 15, 17, etc., what do you look for in a good person and a good player, I suppose, that irrespective of winning or losing?
I think you said it, a good person. It's always person before athletes. And I love having the first, like I do genuinely, as you say, they're grade 10, 11, 12. I see myself as a mentor more so than coaching them the skill of netball. They're actually very skillful netballers. And even in pharmacy, I always talk about my job is to make you a better person. So no matter how long you're with me for, as long as you leave a better person than when you first started. And that's what I see my role at school netball is how do I make them better people on and off the court, winning, losing. How do they be a good role model? Those younger girls are all looking up to them. So that teaching them about even legacy, all those that came before them, all those that are going to wear the dress after them, etc. So really talking to them about the big picture rather than just, this is the skill we need to put out on the court this weekend. And I take the role really seriously because I know it's such a pivotal time in their lives. We trained this morning. The Year 12s had a huge maths exam today, and they were all at training and even teaching them that about being productive with their time management skills. It's something that I really prided myself on when I was playing netball, and whether it's a part-time job, whatever it might be. But even teaching them life lessons, like when they might make a decision and you're like, okay, that might be right at school where you've got protection, but if that was in a work environment, what would that look like? So they probably get sick of my life lessons, but no, I genuinely enjoy the impact that you can have on that age group as a coach. And they don't see you as a teacher. They don't see you as a parent. And some of them I'm still really good friends with years later, and, almost see them as, a daughter or a big sister to my daughter, and seeing them thrive in there. Yeah, it's a privilege.
That's excellent. And the importance of a good coach, because there is a big drop-off of girls that finish school and they don't play sport. So having a good coach and a mentor, something like to say, look, keep in it. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be elite. And it'd be great to see post-school the percentage of girls continuing to play community sport, because there's so many mental health benefits, and that, some data show that there's a big drop-off.
Absolutely. And we even see it at school level through seniors, where it's priority around study. And that, I fully support that. But I also think, I look at my journey through study and netball, and as I said, I had some of the best time management skills because I knew that I had the juggle of sport and school. But also I think for females now to look at the professional landscape and to look at the opportunities in so many different sports, that women can have careers in sports now. They can go and have babies and come back and play as mums. Like, it's amazing the era that we're living in for female sport. But school has a huge role in that, of how do we find that balance between study and sport or extracurricular activities in general. And I think that, as I said, I love it where we are at school, and that's a huge focus on sport, but also the benefits of sport. You and I both know the benefits of sport and lifelong benefits of sport. So I think as a collective community, we all have a role to play.
No, absolutely. And in regards to some of the guests that I've chatted to, Ali Brigginshaw was told that she couldn't play rugby league because there's no rugby league team. Elise Villani, same thing, girls cricket, sorry, there's no team, give it up. And now there's pathways, there's development squads, there's under 12 national teams and things like that, which is fabulous.
And competition, like I look at netball, they had it pretty exclusive there for a long time, and now, these young women they can go off in so many directions.
It's just saying that
the sponsorship, the endorsements,
like
the opportunities.
It says unable to connect. We're having issues reaching out our server.
Right through to Olympic level. Like, you look at what the women are doing, and some of our most famous Olympians.
So it just says.
Absolutely.
It's a really bright future.
A couple of questions for you, Karen. If you had to have one subscription service, Netflix or Spotify?
Netflix.
You're a bit of a movie or a series binger, or?
I'm just not a music person. The kids run the Spotify in the car, so I'm not one to sit and make a playlist, whereas I'm probably not one to sit and watch a lot of Netflix either. But yeah, I definitely would be TV over music.
Do you watch cricket or tennis?
I would be tennis more so than cricket.
More so than tennis. Okay. And Australian Open?
Yes.
A long lunch with friends or a long run with friends?
A long lunch.
Whereabouts?
I just had one on the weekend, actually. It was really nice. I love long lunches it is that notion of there is no end time, if that makes sense. I love the ability to be able to sit down and just be immersed in the conversation and not thinking I've got to get home or I've got to be somewhere tomorrow. So, long
That's
lunches.
what a holiday is about too, in regards to there's no set structure. It's like the only decision you need to make is what we're having for lunch or dinner. That's a good holiday.
Correct. You don't need to. I think with holidays, for me, it's not having a clock. Like, it's not setting an alarm. It's not thinking we've got to be here by this time, do this, or what the routine is. It's just
Do you switch off? Your alarm, do you completely switch off?
within reason when you own a business. I'm quite lucky now that I do have business partners, so genuinely I feel like I can switch off. But also it's sometimes choosing. I was really, really lucky. I did the Kokoda track in 2019. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever done with an amazing group of pharmacy owners through Terry White Kmart. But so much of that was the fact that you were non-contactable for 10 days. Even for some of the business, even for some of the business owners, actually made them really set up their business to think, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, who doesn't know that password? Who can't log in and do that? Like, they cannot ring me at the drop of a hat. So it was so good for me and for my team to go, actually, we can't ring Karen, so we just have to work it out ourselves. But also, how have I set everything up to make sure they can work it out themselves? So, yeah, the ability to have no phone contact is huge.
I'm imagining at some point in time people will say the same about ChatGPT when you pull the plug. Like, can you work out this problem without going to ChatGPT? So
that's so true.
Okay, your scoreboard moment, which is a moment in your life which is very, very visible. It's like a Kodak moment back in the day, where from that moment things changed. Your scoreboard moment, Karen Brown.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of little moments, but if I've got to pick one moment, I touched on it briefly at the start. So I was, always wanted to be a pharmacist, and then in year 12 was offered opportunity to go to the AIS, and I declined it because you couldn't do pharmacy in Canberra in those days. So I was so determined to do pharmacy, so I declined that option. Then at the end of year 12, I got my OP, and I remember opening that envelope, and I was one score short of what I needed to do to get into pharmacy. And I thought, this is devastating. I said no to this, and now I haven't got into pharmacy. I could have gone to the AIS, etc. And then at the time, my older brother, who was 2 years older than me, we ended up getting the same score. And I always felt I was so much smarter than him. And he wrote this really nice card to me, and at the end was like, I knew you were never any smarter than me. So I was just devastated. And something I talk about to teenagers now is that OP means nothing after that 24, 48 hours. But it was one of those moments where I thought I could have, should have, etc. But then I'm a firm believer things happen for a reason. And I stayed in Brisbane, did science, and then got offered a Firebirds contract, which wouldn't have happened if I was at the AIS. I wouldn't have been able to do pharmacy and Firebirds. I could do science and Firebirds. So things always happen for a reason. But at that time, as a year 12, opening that envelope, I thought I'd made all the wrong decisions, and everything works out.
Sure, that's an awesome sliding doors scoreboard moment. That's what I love. A little bit of sliding doors of like, this is the time I made this decision, and guess what happened? Life changed forever. That's brilliant. Now, we have a sponsor at Scoreboard, and that is Swyftx, and they're proudly Brisbane-based, and they're Australia's most trusted crypto platform. They've got over 1.1 million users in Australia and New Zealand, and their US TV campaign is Where Can Crypto Take You? And as part of that sponsorship, we have a segment called The Bucket List, and The Bucket List is a sporting event that you haven't attended thus far, Karen, that you'd love to attend. I'm curious to know what that is.
So my first initial thought is the Olympics. But then I think how blessed we are that it is literally going to be down the road in 2032. So I feel like that is something that will be achieved. So I'm going to say the Super Bowl. And it's not because I have seen NFL live and I don't get the game. But I think the Super Bowl, so much of live sport is actually just the whole package. It's being in the city, it's being in the stand, it's everything that goes with it as a spectacle. So, yeah, if someone asked me to go to the Super Bowl, that would be a hell yeah moment.
Yeah, hell yeah moment. I love it. There you go, hell yeah, or a partial no, or a get back to me. What was the thing about the time? Like,
I don't have the capacity to make it over there.
Super Bowl's in there. And also this morning we just found out that the AFL Grand Final show Snoop Dogg this year, which is interesting. And the bucket list for me was getting to an AFL Grand Final, which I went to in 2023. Unfortunately, the Lions fell a bit short, but the day was unbelievable. And speaking about sporting moments, what's your all-time favourite sporting moment?
Well, I've been very lucky. I've been at a few AFL Grand Finals, and I was there in 23 as well. And whilst we lost, wasn't it phenomenal to have 80,000
beautiful weather?
It was
Kiss
just amazing.
Was good. I enjoyed Kiss too.
Yeah. So I've been very lucky to do AFL Grand Finals. Mine is actually probably more sentimental, and I feel like I could say some of the Origin games I've been at, Pat Rafter winning the US Open. I still remember sitting up watching that. But I'm actually going to say the 2015-2016 Firebirds Grand Final wins. They beat Sydney Swifts 2 years in a row by 1 point. I remember being there in the stand with fellow netballers, and to think where we'd been 10 years earlier, which was consistently on the bottom of the ladder, to see our team in 1 goals, extra time against New South Wales rivals. As I said, the people you're with, it was just 2 of the most magical. And when it happened the second year in a row, we were just, how could this possibly have happened? So that brings back the most kind of memories for me.
I'm hoping the Lions could do it this year as well, back to back as well. Wouldn't it be fabulous?
Yes, it'll be interesting.
Let's see if this podcast aged well to see how these results over the Freo and Hawthorn and then into the finals. Karen, I've got one more piece of advice. No, I'm asking you for a piece of advice and one last question. A piece of advice from you in terms of the kids that you're coaching in and around wanting to become an elite athlete. What's some advice that you can give them?
To become an elite, I think it's one of my life mottos is do the right thing. Do the right thing, but also do the right thing when no one's watching. Like, so much of it is actually when no one's watching and you're on your own. That's where the gold is, and knowing in yourself what you've got to do and not relying on other people to always be there to lift you up. So do the right thing. And do the right thing when no one's
That's watching. Some great piece of advice. I've had that a couple of times. I think Duncan Armstrong came to mind in that in terms of doing the laps and the training and the preparation. It's not glorious, he said. It's only glorious when you potentially are the world's best, and all that hard work and emotion pays off. Karen Brown, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat to you today on Scoreboard, the podcast. I really do appreciate your time, and congratulations what you have achieved thus far with your pharmacy and batch tested and being a parent and being a coach. I wish you all the best in the future and looking forward to following your progress.
Thanks so much, Chris.